Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Ciccone. I'm an associate professor of political science here at GW and co-director of Honors Eurasia. We're thrilled that you can join us for our latest iteration in the series New Voices on Eurasia, which brings together leading junior scholars from across the country to share their latest research on political science, economics, sociology, anthropology, international relations. We try to keep it very cross-disciplinary. I think we're going to be wading into demography here today, which we're thrilled to have our featured speaker. So thank you very much for coming to this monthly talk. We're delighted to host Marat Iliyasov, who is with us here at GW as a research fellow all year and is, in my opinion, one of the leading scholars on Chechen politics currently working. He's my go-to person when I have pressing questions on that republic and the North Caucasus writ large. Marat received his PhD from the University of St. Andrews and has received prestigious fellowships at Miami University and University of Wisconsin-Madison. Is here with us for the year, doing a lot of great work, as I'm sure he can talk about in brief about Chechen relationship with Moscow over the decades, but also the U.S. relationship, right? The new book project on U.S.-Russian relations within the lens of the Chechen War, but Chechen wars. But today we're going to be talking about his first book on Chechen demographic growth, and we're thrilled to have him with us. So please give a kind welcome to Marat. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, David, for the kind introduction. I'm happy to be here, and thank you very much for coming as well. It's already end of the day, so it's better to spend time somewhere else, right? So, yeah, as David mentioned, it is my book project. Actually, it is part of it, and the book project is talking about Chechen demographic growth, but not from the point of view of the indicator as unresolved conflict. But I wanted to single out this particular area to present today because I think it is important. And the project is same as the New Voices of Eurasia, is very interdisciplinary. And there are a lot of things in it, including anthropology, sociology, and political science as well. So the picture here depicts one of the big families in Chechnya. It's not because of Kadyrov I have chosen, it's just public figure. And so there will be no any kind of implication for me for choosing this picture. But this kind of large family, I calculated today 16 children. I think one or two of them were adopted, but like even 14 children, it's kind of a big family, right? So, and it is not super unusual in Chechnya to have that big families. It's rather unusual to have small families, one, two children. And the motivation to have that many children is what kind of unfolds why the growth is an indicator of unresolved conflict. So I will be talking today about the motivation of people to have large families. I will start. Okay.
Click on the presentation.
Click on the presentation. Okay, here, yeah. So I will start boring you with some stats here. It's the stats starting from the collapse of the Soviet Union about Russian demographic growth, and it gives overall context in which Chechen demographic growth is kind of outstanding. So the Russian demography, as you can probably not see in this table, is going down starting from 1992. So Russia was losing every year the population of several hundred thousand people. And the only 3 years that it didn't lose that population are highlighted. I actually highlighted 4, but it's zero demographic growth there. And the demographic growth that Russia demonstrated during these years is very small. It's 0.2, 0.3%, not more. So all other years were decline of the population. And for Putin, it was a big problem. He was actually tasking himself with the idea of reversing this trend and as one of his big projects. And he supported the program that was launched by his predecessor, Boris Yeltsin, that targeted people who lived in other former Soviet republics, Russian people, trying to support their move to Russia, so they could come from these republics and resettle in Russia. So that would increase the demography in Russian Federation. And this program, plus pro-natalist policies that were quite generous as well, that was also a big Putin project. And guess what? Nothing worked. So, and there was no actual need for that kind of support and pro-natalist policies in the North Caucasus, in the eastern part of it, and especially in Chechnya. So where we could see the growth of the population in the whole Russian Federation is eastern part of the North Caucasus and Tiva and Altai, so which is Siberian regions. And here in the map, you can see this. So the darkest areas, which is actually Altai here, it's the stats from 2021, and Chechnya. So, and the darkest areas says that there were more than 20 children born per 1,000 people in these republics. And the lightest areas are, the lighter the area is, the fewer children were born per 1,000 people. So I do not know the reasons behind the population growth in Altai or Tiva. They might have their own demographic reasons and setting. But in the North Caucasus, it's more or less the same. The republics of Chechnya, Ingushetia, and Dagestan, which demonstrate the highest growth, are very similar in all factors that demographers usually indicate. So that would be religion, that would be urbanization, that would be level of education, and that kind of things. They're pretty much similar. Income as well, employment, but yet Chechnya is outstanding in this situation. And I will be like wrestling with myself and Russian statistics right now, trying to deny my own claims and then support them. So get ready for this unequal fight. So here, just to deny that what I said just before, that Chechnya is outstanding, stats here. So I'm comparing the demographic growth of the biggest North Caucasian nations, ethnic groups. So that would be, and I'm comparing them to Russian as well, growth. So that would be Chechens, Ingush, Avar, Dargin, Kumyk, and the lowest line is Russian. So, and here you can see that I took the stats from the Rosstat, it's demographic statistics, and it starts from the census of 1959, the very first column. And from that point up until 2021, the Chechen population grew almost four times bigger. And Ingush population grew even bigger, so almost 5 times. So, and the Kumyk population a little bit more than 4 times, whereas Russian population declined from 114 million to 105 million people. So, however, as you know, there is lie, big lie, and statistics. So in terms of statistics here it doesn't include the loss that Chechens experienced during these 2 last wars with Russia, and therefore the growth and potential that Chechens lost during these wars is kind of diminishing the growth. So that's why the calculations show that Chechens are not actually the fastest growing nation. Whereas, again, I'm wrestling with myself here, and the next stat support my claim that it is still the fastest growing nation. So this table shows that the number of children per 1,000 people in 3 republics, in Chechnya, in Ingushetia, and Dagestan. And here you can see that the growth of the Chechens is smaller only in the first 2 lines, which is year 2000 and year 2001. These years were the harshest fights in Chechnya during the Second War with Russia. And at that point, actually, you can see that the number of children born per 1,000 people in Ingushetia and Dagestan were just 2 or 3 children higher. And at that point, hundreds of thousands Chechens were moved out and actually to Ingushetia and Dagestan. That contributed to the stats, to having their statistics better and making Chechen statistics look worse. And you can see that the situation changed dramatically from the 2003. So from 15, it jumped up to almost 25 children per 1,000. Whereas in Ingushetia and Dagestan, it dropped. So people started returning from this republic back, and Chechen demographics improved at once. And then it goes stably that Chechen fertility rates are higher than Ingush or Dagestan. Once again, there is a little bit of statistics play here because Dagestan includes many different ethnic groups and they have different also fertility rates there. But more or less, it indicates the situation. And I love this picture. This is a picture of a wedding that happened during the First War with Russia. And I intend to have it as on the cover of my book, actually. So you can see that even during war, weddings happened in this picture, and even fighters participated in these weddings. I wouldn't be surprised that one of their friends would be the actual groom. The groom in Chechen tradition is not present usually in the wedding of his own, so he's probably somewhere. But other people are there, and it is not safe for them to participate in this kind of wedding. And yet, people are marrying, people are having children. And in Second War, the situation, I know many cases also when Chechen women would get married to the guys who were fighters, who were hunted by Russian federal military, and yet girls would choose. It was not out of despair; it was rather out of support, and this is one of the motivations that I will talk a little bit later about. So having this set up, I will start explaining like theoretical part of this book, why this is happening, right? So what can explain the situation when the war is going on and yet people are getting married and having children. Like how crazy you should be to start a family during the situation of war. And just to keep in mind, Chechnya is a very small republic, and it doesn't mean that the war is only in one part of it. It's everywhere. So everywhere you can go out and get killed. So in this situation, I have chosen several theories that out of which I built my own theoretical framework, just picking the best parts of those theories. And to briefly present them, one of them is risk insurance theory. So it's kind of when it's more economic theory, and it's more about the situation when there is no big support, social support from the state. So in this situation, usually family is large because parents are thinking about their future, about them being already of respectful age and children supporting them. Another theory that also could help to explain Chechen demographic growth in this setup is a replacement theory. So let's say if parents are losing a child for whatever reason, they want another child. Maybe it kind of gives them psychological comfort. Maybe it's just to fulfill their parental need or whatever, but it is kind of replacement. What's the down part? The part that is cannot cover Chechen case is that replacement theory does not talk about the situation when there are multiple losses. So if there are several children, and in Chechen there were cases when the whole family, all children would die, like 5 brothers, for example, would die in war, right? And that would be difficult to replace. And I also liked used bulge theory, which is pretty much why I liked it and why I put it here, because I kind of reversed it. So in fact, it talks about the situation that conflicts erupt if there are too many young population in the societies, whereas I am trying to explain how conflict can impact that young population appear in societies. So that's probably the only reason I try to think about if it is related somehow to the Chechen wars, but I didn't find any correlation between. And the last theory that I'm using is demographic security dilemma, which is quite fascinating theory, and it's based on political science. Security dilemma, you all know, it's very popular. So pretty much it says about tells us about the competition that occurs in between two groups. So one group tries to overgrow demographically the other in order to take over. And this theory actually explains the situation when Chechnya was right after the deportation, when people returned from Central Asia and they found their land occupied by Russians. So Russians were majority there at that time. And Chechen demographic actually was skyrocketed. And one of the reasons was probably because people wanted their land back. And the only way they saw it's possible by overgrowing Russian population. So actually, this one is the last theoretical theory that helped me to build my own theoretical framework. So it's based on the observation made by John Anson and Avinoam Mayer, who were considering the context in which demographic growth happens. So according to them, it's very important to know the setup in which a group lives, because in some situations, the group might be threatened. And that was actually the case in Chechnya. So the group was, it felt threatened by Russia, by the fact that it is surrounded by Russia. And in this situation, these scholars were trying to see what happens through economic factor, if they are if the group is rich or if they are poor, and how it reflects in their demographic growth. But I also did not find any correlation in these terms with Chechens, but they set up the fact that the surrounding is important. I took it into my theoretical framework. And the last one, which is also very important, and this is indicative here from Warren Robinson, who was talking about group identity, which is probably one of the most powerful factors. So the procreation as such happens not only because of for the sake of procreation, for the sake of own family, but for the sake of nation. And Robinson here quote is saying that when it becomes personal business, like having child just for yourself, just because you want to be a parent or whatever, then the fertility rates are going down. So the idea that it should be a strong identity of the group is right there. In terms of methodology, it's qualitative. I used some stats, as you can see, to demonstrate the case, but I was researching the motivation of the people, and for knowing motivation, you have to ask them what drive you to have children, right? So I interviewed 150 people, 150 Chechens, 130 of them were migrants who live in Europe, and 20 were Chechens in Chechnya. Most of the interviews took place online via WhatsApp or Skype communication. They were recorded, of course, and of course, I asked permission for the record. So why I'm saying that that it is relevant to the whole Chechen group, because most of my interviews are migrants, because they all of them were first generation. They were actual migrants. And as many research, I have listed some names and down there. So many researchers indicate that the demographic patterns in the first generation of migrants are the same as in the homeland. So that's why I think it is relevant to Chechnya. And the question that I was asking was pretty much, as it says down there, like, what are the reasons of having families, even in times of war, or why Chechens want large families? And I will skip some quotes that I put because of the time, and I want to preserve more time for Q&A rather than me speaking a lot here. So I will give you the findings. So one of the findings, it shows that around 80% of my interviewees, so all my interviewees related somehow to the demographic growth of the Chechens to the war. And around 80% of them were talking about survival of the group. So the idea was the fear that Chechens as a nation will be extinct. So they didn't want the group disappear. They didn't want that the group, and in their mind was the bigger the group, the stronger it is, the more chances it has to survive. And also it was, of course, restoration of the loss that Chechens experienced during wartime, and the idea of the deportation that was probably one of the biggest loss that Chechens experienced during the history of the nation. It's also related to the restoration. And last but not the least, it was a demonstration of resistance. So the idea was that, okay, Russians want us dead, we will survive. So that was kind of, I will demonstrate, even if I do not fight directly Russian, I will fight it with the fact that I will have large family and I will survive. So that was the idea behind the resistance. And there are some usual for demography explanations that are, for instance, religion or urbanization level or whatever. And there are some kind of unusual, which were more specific to Chechens. I believe maybe in some other ethnic groups could be found also similar, but I didn't see in demographic literature this kind of explanation. For instance, so that would be personal pride, right? So it's right down here, was only 8% more or less who mentioned it, but it was like interesting how pride is involved in having children. So that would be finding number one. And so as I said, there are some quotes, but I will not bore you with them. And finding two is 20% of my interviews more or less said that actually Chechen nation is not growing. It's the growth is decelerating. So that's what they meant by saying that there is no population growth as such. So they were kind of, through these words, were expressing their concern that it doesn't grow as fast as it could, or as they would like it to grow. And 50% of this 20% were blaming economic instability and limited income for that. They would indicate, like, look, those people who are affluent, they can afford having many children, like Kadyrov, for example. He can afford 16 children, right? And whereas other people cannot do it, they cannot give them a good life, they cannot. And so in this case, economic factors started playing the role. Although some time ago, and we're coming here into the theory of demographic transition, some time ago it didn't play that much role. So people were poor, but they yet would have large families. And again, like, normal size of Chechen family, more usual today is 3-4 children at least. And in many cases it goes beyond, like, 4, 5, 6, and 16. So around 40% of my interviews, so like about percentage, you could say 80, 60 and stuff. It's not 100%, and part of them, because many people would name several reasons, right? So that's why the calculation doesn't have this total 100. So 40% of my interviews said that of this batch that were saying that Chechen growth is decelerating, that they would blame emancipation of women. Today, Chechen women are much freer than they used to be. They can seek education, they can take leading positions, and most of my interviews were men. So, and of course they would blame women, right? So, and globalization was another reason of their concern, and that was also surprising, finding that 50% would blame the same wars. And this is kind of counter my argument that wars actually behind the demographic growth, that wars kind of propel people to think about future, to think about these patriotic ideas of survival of the ethnic group. So they would say, like, why to bring children to this world, which is so cruel? Next war is not looming behind the mountains. It will be, like, very soon. So in this situation, I don't want children. So that would be the explanation. And talking further here, there is a small batch of women that I have had as my interviews. It's only 15%. And guess what? They blamed men for decelerating of the demographic growth. So there is a nice quote right here, I think, about that. But all in all, they had pretty much the same motivation, pretty much patriotic one, that would highlight the concern of the group survival. And this, I think, is the most important to demonstrate. They were, by blaming men, they were actually more patriotic than men were in this situation. So having said all this, I will come to the conclusion, and I will present a quick theory or hypothesis that I think can be applicable to many other cases, not just Chechen. So in terms of conclusion, it seems that Chechens are quite determined to grow numerically, and they think that this demographic growth is related to the conflict, to the feeling of being insecure, having the neighbor that can attack them at any point. And in the case of this attack, they want to be strong as a nation in order either to some kind of defend themselves or to ward this attack off. So they wouldn't think about attacking. And the important part is again that what drives this motivation and what drives this demography is strong identity. Would it be weak identity of ethnic group? They would choose the other option. So instead of going high with the demography, they would choose assimilation. And here, what I'm saying, that small nation like Chechens, so the nation, I would say, that is no bigger than 3 million people that is concerned with their survival of the group or the threat of assimilation. So they can, if they have strong identity and they are exposed to existential threat, they will probably choose strategy of survival and resistance through demographic growth. Whereas if they would have a weak collective identity and they would be exposed to existential threat, they would probably choose an option of assimilation that would also be a survival strategy, but different one. And in both cases, if there would be no existential threat for these groups, so there would be other factors that would play the role in the demographic growth. So the nation would be either growing or declining or whatever, but there would be other factors in play. And of course, once again, I'm not talking about this patriotic feeling as the main motivation. It plays with many other demographic motivations that people might have in their head. So that would be me today. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. So as our custom here, I like to kick things off with a question from myself, but then we'll open it up to the audience and our online audience, which we encourage to submit questions and contribute to the discussion. So just to pick up on some of the points you made in this last slide, am I correct to think that we currently are in the top right quadrant, in that there's less of an existential threat to the Chechen nation as of today? Or how would you place the current dynamic? And also kind of a related question, it seemed to me that existential threats really strongly affect collective identity, right? That it could promote that type of feeling, that collectiveness, and the absence of it could also lead to a weaker collective identity. So where do you see both where Chechnya is right now and also the development of the collective identity over time under the current regime, given all the other factors? Do you see it strengthening under globalization, or do you see it weakening if and when the nation would prosper or develop in a positive direction?
Right. Thank you very much, David. We're looking at another 30 minutes of talk.
That's fine. You can choose what you'd like to respond to.
I think that we are closer to the left corner, actually. And as I presented the stats at the beginning, so Chechens are the fastest growing nation in the Russian Federation, and that's why it kind of indicates that the conflict is not resolved. We need more people and stuff like that. However, the fact that the growth is decelerating is actually showing that, yeah, Chechen might be moving towards the right corner. As for the identity and the current regime, especially, so identity question is very tricky. I think that identity remains strong, but it changes, right? There is no identity that is stable and stays unchanged for a long time. So Chechen identity is also changing. So back then, let's say 30 years ago, Chechens would identify themselves like, okay, if you're Chechen, you must, I don't know, hate Russian, for example, right? Yeah, you fight Russian. If you don't fight Russian or you're like friends, you're not Chechen. So kind of very binary, very simplistic, and that kind of understanding. But today under Kadyrov's regime, one cannot express that kind of feelings, right? One cannot think about doing this kind of simplifications as well. So it's more complex. And today, identity moves to the safer area. And this is probably, I would say, Sufi Islam. which is kind of acceptable for most of the society. And in this case, also thinking about the demographic connection, we might think about the fact that religions, like major religions in the world, they all support demographic growth. So I hope I answered.
Thank you. Let's open it up to the audience. Anybody have any questions? Yeah. If you just introduce yourself to people who don't know you.
Harley Balzer, Georgetown University emeritus. I guess I would two things. One, I was struck by your saying that the maternity capital program was generous. Because the data I've seen, it would indicate that it worked in the rural areas. It really had very little impact in large cities where cost of living was higher and wages were higher and the amounts just weren't generous enough. And of course, you have to wait 3 years to be able to spend it, which I guess is the way I would encourage people to take better care of their children. But the data for Russia as a whole also is kind of skewed by the cohort of women in childbearing age. And there's a big fight going on among a lot of the Russian demographers over whether even the 1.8 fertility rate that was being reported didn't have much to do with maternity capital. My other question is, if existential threat is supposed to be a spur to population growth, and Putin has been talking about the existential threat to Russia for 25 years, why is the Russian population not growing?
Nice. Thank you very much for your questions. So first of all, about the generosity. So everything is in comparison, right? So for Moscow, probably this this money that they would give for every child or maternity capital. So no, it's pretty much nothing, right? Because Moscow has like standards that are even higher than in the West. But for the rural areas, it's quite substantive, and that's why I said that it is generous. So
70% of the population is urban.
correct, and for most of them, like who are struggling to survive, to make income, and it's kind of very substantive help. And yet, you're right, it didn't work. So people have to have in their mind something different. Before these kind of programs, pronatal programs, start working. And as for the second question, yes, Russia, as we all know, is under existential threat for already 30 years, if no longer, as Putin says, and we believe him. So, as I indicated, this kind of outcome, this kind of hypothesis of mine works only for small ethnic groups, small nations, which are no bigger than 3 million people, I said. And this is pretty much out of my head, this number. I know that probably like Lithuanians, Georgians, like those people that I'm very familiar with, Latvians, they are not very much preoccupied with their survival. They're a little bit more than 3 million. Whereas Estonians, for them, it's already a little bit different. They feel safer, but they are not as big people, and they think about the demography very hard. So out of this, I kind of put this limitation of, okay, 3 million people probably would be a fair number to say that, okay, if you're a bigger nation than 3 million, you might be concerned with your survival. So Russians, Putin did not convince them that that they are under existential threat. So that's why probably demography doesn't work this way.
Thank you. Let me give one for the audience, or one from online, then I'll do you, Lauren, if that's okay. Two questions. One from Lisa K. What were fertility rates in the group of informants that you were able to talk to? And then the second, what type of family losses were quoted as justification for the fertility decisions? For example, parity of children loss, or did a loss of extended family members play a role in the decisions to have children? So are people
directly affected by the war and responding to those losses at all? Or is it more kind of a not global, but community-wide sense of loss that needed to be accounted for?
It was community-wise sense of loss. So, and I kind of didn't exclude anyone from my research. So everyone who was adult Chechen was eligible to take part in it, and I questioned everyone. So interviewed every one of them, and some people would have families, large families. Some people would have small families, depending on the age, maybe. So some of the people were still young, of 20 years old, for example. I had several informants of 20 years old around that age. And in this case, I would ask about their motivation. So what would they want? Do you want a family? How big you imagine your family? How many children do you want? Why? And that kind of question. So it would change a little bit the structure of the interview, but the idea was anyway the same, because they were referring to the same loss of the community, which is already coming to the second question. And yes, this idea that we are one community, we need to support each other, we need to grow demographically, that was behind the answers.
Great. Lauren.
So thanks, Marat. This is super interesting. I want to pick up on the previous question here in terms of the form of threat. So does it, Chechnya, the nation of Chechnya is located in another nation, which is Russia, sort of physical, well-defined state. Is the nature of the threat for a nation inside another nation different in some way than the nature of the threat for a nation with its own boundaries that is, self-determined, et cetera? And I am thinking about this just in context of the war in Ukraine, and wondering, that's obviously a much larger population than 3 million, but very anecdotally, I know a lot of people who are having babies. A lot of people I know in Ukraine are having babies. And so, I'm wondering, again, what is the nature of the threat that you think kind of causes this demographic boom?
I think that actually it doesn't matter if there is a nation within the nation or it's two separate nations. So I mentioned the case of Israel before, and Israel considered themselves surrounded by Arabs, right, all around. And that was also a research, although they research Jewish communities in the US, that two scholars that I mentioned, Avinoam Meir and John, I don't remember the second one, Anson. Yeah. So they were researching Jewish communities, but they were referring to Israel and saying that, okay, this is the nation that is surrounded, and they have this idea that we are under constant threat, existential threat. So, and of course, to do some kind of criminal act, major criminal act like genocide, for example, probably it's within the nation it happens, right, rather than outside. So it's probably both. So it wouldn't matter that much, to my view. So if you have the feeling of existential threat, it doesn't matter if it is inside one state or it is like separate. As for the baby boom in Ukraine, I took out of the first slide one quote that I had from one of my interviewees, and this is the anecdote of this situation. So one person from outside came to Chechnya, and in one family, he sees many children, like, somebody came, a guest came, and they surrounded him like, oh, screaming, running around. And he is not used, he's from Europe, he's not used to that kind of big families. So he probably got dizzy or he looked around, like, so many children. And that was the moment when the father of these children came out, and he says, war, no electricity, nothing to do. So there might be many different reasons. That's what I'm saying. There was interesting research actually about the electricity in Netherlands. So one small town there was left without electricity for 1 week. Guess what? Baby boom happened in this village 1 year after. So it's kind of valid. So I don't know what is in Ukrainian case. I think there might be the feeling of restoration of losses as well there, but I don't think that Ukrainians are thinking that the nation is under existential threat. It's a big nation, it's a strong nation, and they have large diaspora. So I don't think that this particular feeling plays the role, but there might be many different other factors.
Great. Other questions? Yes, Henry.
Yeah, excuse me, yeah, Henry Hale, George Washington University. So again, I mean, I've talked with you about this before, like very interesting
Right.
research. I guess just a couple questions, mostly just related to, are there other kinds of behaviors that one might expect to be driven by the same basic logic that you could detect? I mean, for example, I don't really know what patterns of mixed marriages were before. I mean, I know Chechnya in particular is fairly homogeneous relative to other republics, but still, do you see a greater tendency towards avoiding mixed marriages, towards preserving the culture in that kind of way, for example? And I also wonder about are there changes in just what's accepted as normal family structures that might facilitate just having more children, even though you might have like men who can't be there all the time because they're fighting in war, looser norms in marriages, different norms in marriages, kind of, informal marriages, all these different kinds of patterns.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, and very interesting questions. So in terms of inter-ethnic mixed marriages, so probably it was last time when I visited my hometown, and I was walking around the street, and from pretty much every household, I could hear the screams of children in Russian. So I assume that there would be mixed families, or there could be actually not mixed families, but families that lived in Russia and they came home with the idea of, okay, they will learn some language at home. That's a usual way that Chechens try to preserve their identity. Language is like of utmost importance. But mixed marriages happening quite a lot, and I had also different research interviewing Russian women in Chechnya who stayed there, who also married Chechens, who came to Chechnya after war, even during war, and they still live there, and how they feel, what they feel, how they adapt to the society. All these questions were very interesting to me. So it's quite challenging, especially now when Chechnya is so homogeneous in ethnic diversity terms. So yeah, mixed marriage is happening, but also Chechens consider the ethnicity from the point of view of father. So if father is Chechen, like children are automatically Chechens. Again, it involves some work of bringing them to the relatives and making them learn Chechen language, some traditions and that kind of stuff, but it is happening. Yeah, can you remind me the second question,
About
please?
like marriage structures,
Yes.
like family structures,
Right.
broadly
Yeah.
speaking.
Yeah, so nothing changed in these terms. So marriage usually occur with the help of local mullah. So in this case, it is not need to be formalized by the state institution or something like that. So if mullah approves it, you're fine. And yeah, there was no many of like changes in these terms, although during the time of war and when Chechen girls or women would marry fighters who would be officially illegal and hiding, right? So that would the wedding ceremony would happen like undercover, if you want. So it would be a very small group of people. Just you need, I think, two witnesses according to Islamic tradition for that. And then the girl would stay actually in the house of her parents or her own or whatever, so in order to hide the fact of marriage, right? So, but sometimes they would move also to the woods to live with their husbands. So in this case, the situation had some changes, but the idea of that the marriage should be approved by God through mullah is still there. And in many cases, it is also formalized, especially now. Chechens are actively using this package of benefits from the Russian state, and being like in formal marriage probably gives some kind of benefits too. I'm not sure about that though.
Other questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Carter Johnson, American Councils. Thank you for the sharing research. Very interesting. I was curious how much maybe some of that, the decisions that are made to have high children are driven by social pressures, kind of the tyranny of the cousins. And given you did so much of the research with people that have been outside of Chechen now for a long time, they already must have new generations of children that have grown up and are making decisions about family. So did you see this kind of new generation that are self-identify as Chechen, but are growing up in a different environment? Are they feeling the same? Are they also having much larger birth rates than comparative groups? And second, recognize you've driven the theory based on the Chechen case. Have you done any samples of trying to fit in cases, and what have you seen there? I mean, are the Estonians having, or the Abkhaz, are they having higher birth rates, especially after big shocks of either large influxes of other groups or wars?
Right. So about the second generation of Chechens in Europe, right? So I do disagree with the idea calling them second generation of migrants, because they are already not migrants, they're locals there. So I could definitely see the change in the ideas, but it was not topic of my research. So they definitely see them as Chechens, but they absorbed the different demographic patterns, they absorb different behavior, they absorb different ideas. Sometimes they're from German, French, or Czech, or whatever, Polish, and second language is Chechen. It's already spoken in it's kind of broken Chechen already, but you can still understand them. And they have like different motivation. Sometimes they have troubles, especially young children, like 10 years old or 12 years old, to show Chechnya on the map, for example, or that kind of things. But parents doing their best to raise them as Chechens, to give them traditional education and familiarize them with traditions. And I like to also show as an example of Chechen diaspora, which is around 200 years old in Jordan. They speak very well Chechen language. It is old Chechen language. It's 200 years old Chechen language, but we speak perfectly well. We mutually understand, and it's actually fantastic how they master. And one of the Jordanian Chechens once told me that, first, until you're 5 years old, we are forbidden to speak any other languages. And then it starts with Arabic, with other languages, but their first language is Chechen. So that was kind of harsh way of raising children, and in Jordan, like making them Chechens. I didn't take the pen to make notes. Maybe
your pattern.
Yeah.
You created, were there other cases that you've seen that fit in well? Or
Right. Yeah. So I actually looked at some other cases that could support, as all scholars, you want other cases to support your theories, right? Rather than deny them. So there are cases that that actually support theory. It's not Estonian case because Estonians probably their growth could be explained by demographic security dilemma. There are 30% of Russians in Estonia, but Estonians are safe in these terms too. They are majority. They are owners of their country, of their land. They can impose rules. They can impose laws, and the Estonian language is the first, so they are not feeling this threat, and they are not in war. As for Abkhaz people, I didn't look at the demography, but I know that there is a Muslim group in Thailand that is actually like in a very similar situation as Chechens were. So they kind of feeling that they're threatened by the Thai majority Patani people. So in their demographic setting is so they have growth. But again, it might be a different factor that plays role. They are Muslim people, so maybe it is religion, maybe they have like different ideas in their head. So I didn't research to support my case. So it's just one case study, and this is probably a big minus, but I didn't have resources to do the world.
Other questions?
Thank you for so interesting research. And you said that majority of your interviewer were men,
Right.
and only 15% of them are women. And my question is, and you say about the role of religion. And my question is about women in Chechen society in Chechnya. It means why I'm asking, was it hard to find interviewer women, or is there any differences in connection with Chechen women? Do you understand?
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Very interesting. And I remember your first point, Carter, as well about the societal pressure. I will respond to this too. So
maybe
yeah.
if, there were same interviewer of women and men, maybe the result were a little different. Do you think so?
No, I don't think that the result would be different because like women would show the same motivation, the same interest in children as men. They would say the same things pretty much. So I don't know what probably it is because of identity. So people are being raised in the same mindset, and they express the same ideas. But it was indeed difficult to find for me Chechen women interviewees. First of all, because the roles in the society. So Chechen women, even if they are like now more emancipated and having possibility to study and be visible and everything, it's still kind of behind the head. Yeah, to be close, right? And especially having in mind the topic of the research, like talking about reproductive study and everything like this is kind of no, I don't want to talk about that. So it was more comfortable to talk to men. It was the same difficult also to find right words with, let's say, younger people or older people, because you have to show like due respect to older people, or you have to kind of make it make yourself look not as whoever to young people as well, so they would respect you. And as for societal pressure, Carter, just recently I was reminded also about the roles in Chechen society, and yes, there is certain pressure that okay, one child in families, it's too little. So and like it starts with family, then it comes with the neighbors, with the relatives, whatever. So everyone wants a new family, a young family to procreate. Okay, well, like what are you waiting for? You're not getting any younger, like have more children. So something like that. So people are encouraged, definitely. And for women, it is a little bit different societal pressure, because with every child, her status growth in the society. So she becomes more and more important and as a family. So she can already be, I don't know, be dictating her own rules if she has many children, especially if she has boys, right? Because boys will support her in any case. So that's the idea about women's status. It's quite peculiar, but it is like also common, I think, in many Muslim societies. So that would be societal pressure. Mhm.
But unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you all so much for coming and joining us this afternoon. Thank you again, Marat, for giving such an enlightening talk. I'm sure there's time for Q&A afterwards if you want to stick around and ask Marat a follow-up question. But we have one more talk in this series in April, and we hope you can join us then. So thanks and have a good evening.